Pleasant good afternoon to you. For Telesur, I'm Regan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. Thank you so much for joining us on From the South. All eyes are on Quito, the Ecuadorian capital, where shortly the presidents of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos will finally be meeting to discuss the border crisis between both countries. The meeting will be mediated by Ecuador's head of state, Rafael Correa, as well as Uruguay's President Tabaré Vázquez, who arrived in Quito just about an hour ago. Santos said he was going to the meeting with the best intentions but low expectations. In contrast, Maduro expressed optimism and said he was ready to sign a peace pact with Colombia. Of course, this all deals with the threat to Venezuela from Colombian paramilitaries who've been smuggling subsidized food out of the country, as well as medical supplies and gasoline.
President Santos, and one of the main issues is a difficult one, but we have to look at the raw facts here. Are they going to fight drug trafficking or not? Are they going to avoid these flights departing from Colombia or from Colombia's land to Venezuela? Venezuela is a victim of that drug trafficking.
President Maduro said that an investigation is underway into the Venezuelan Air Force jet that crashed last Thursday while intercepting a Colombian plane that had illegally entered the country. The two pilots who died in the incident were honored on Sunday.
We ask God for peace to triumph, to always triumph. We came here today to pay homage to these youngsters who gave their lives. We already have the black box, and the investigation is underway, a professional, scientific investigation, as are our military institutions.
Now from Quito, we're joined by Telesur's Liz Schufius. Liz, can you hear me?
Hello, Regan. Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Well, the Colombian president doesn't seem very convinced of the possible success of today's meeting, which is obviously pivotal to dealing with the difficult situation on the border. Can you tell us what the agenda for today's meetings is, and what are the expectations?
Well, Reagan, the agenda for today's meeting is that the presidents will be meeting behind closed doors beginning at 2 o'clock this afternoon. President of Uruguay, who is the president pro tempore of the UNASUR body, Tabaré Vázquez, has just arrived here to where we are now at the Carondelet Presidential Palace in Quito. He spoke to the press outside of the palace and said that he hopes that an agreement can be reached in the near future between Colombia and Venezuela. President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and President of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos, are set to arrive here shortly to Quito. Upon arriving to the historic center of Quito, President Maduro will be visiting the Metropolitan Cathedral, where he will be laying a floral offering to Antonio José de Sucre, who was chief lieutenant under Simón Bolívar in the liberation wars to free the region from Spanish powers. Now, the meeting will begin behind closed doors, as I said before, at 2 p.m. this afternoon. And at around 6 p.m., it is planned that there will be a press conference where results of this meeting will be presented. And at around 6:30, it is planned that there will be a send-off ceremony for the presidents who will be here at the Carondelet Presidential Palace discussing these key issues, these issues of mutual interest that on the Colombian-Venezuelan border today. Some of these issues which are foreseen are smuggling contraband of Venezuelan subsidized goods into Colombia, as well as the issue of drug trafficking and paramilitarism on the border. Well, President Santos said that while he is coming to Quito with good intentions, that he is not coming with great expectations, but that he is willing to discuss these issues. Additionally, President Maduro said that he is coming to Quito open for discussion of these issues, that he would be interested in signing a peace deal today. But we will see how these talks continue throughout the day with the mediation of President Rafael Correa and President Tabaré Vázquez. Reagan.
Well, it's great that they're both coming with open minds. Well, we know that the foreign ministers had met previously with not too much success. What do you think we can expect from the Uruguayan and Ecuadorian presidents who are hosting this meeting?
Well, the involvement of President Tabaré Vázquez and President Rafael Correa in these talks, their mediation of these talks, shows and interests of the SELAC and UNASUR regional bodies. This is an issue of regional concern, as Colombia and Venezuela are members of both regional bodies, which seek to further regional integration. 2 weeks ago, the foreign ministers of Colombia and Venezuela did meet here in Quito, and President Rafael Correa has said that he has spoken with President Tabaré Vázquez to organize this meeting here in Quito with the presidents. So this meeting really it's a regional meeting with the pro tempore presidents of both the UNASUR and SELAC bodies to try to find a solution to facilitate a possible peace deal or agreement for this border crisis.
Well, thanks so much, Liz. We look forward to hearing what comes out of this meeting. We'll touch base with you either tonight or tomorrow. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Reagan.
Now, the other big news of the day is unfolding in Cuba, where in the last few hours, Pope Francis has arrived in Holguin, the home region of the Castro brothers. These are live pictures from Holguin, where the Pope has been holding the second big mass of his Cuban visit. Later, he's due to bless the city of Loma de la Cruz before traveling on to Santiago in the east of the island, where he'll be meeting local bishops.
Porque no abandonas nunca a tu rebaño, sino que por medio de los
On Sunday, Francis offered a crowded open-air mass in Havana's Revolution Square. There, he warned Cubans to beware the dangers of ideology and the lure of selfishness as their country enters a new era of closer ties with the United States. Many Cubans appreciate the Pope's role in the secret talks that led to the opening up of U.S.-Cuba relations. Francis will travel to Washington on Tuesday, where he is expected to meet President Obama and address both the U.S. Congress and the United Nations.
When there are divisions, there is death in our souls, because we are killing our capacity to unite. We are killing friendship. Let us be capable of building a society of friendship.
And Pope Francis was later welcomed by Cuba's President Raúl Castro at the Palace of the Revolution in Havana. And after that meeting, the Pope criticized the ills of Western capitalism. He specifically lashed out at the EU countries due to their apparent lack of interest in creating employment opportunities for their young people. And for about 40 minutes, the Pope also met with the president's brother, the 89-year-old retired president and revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. They reportedly discussed religion and world affairs. Francis also addressed the peace talks taking place in Havana on the reconciliation between the Colombian government and the FARC, stating that failure is not an option. At the end of the Mass, the pontiff called on both parties to achieve a lasting peace deal. The FARC said that the Pope's appeal strengthens the peace process. They had asked to meet with the Pope, but unfortunately, they were not scheduled in his visit.
Please, we do not have the right to allow ourselves yet another failure in this path of peace and reconciliation.
And we've got our correspondent in Colombia, Natalia Margarita, now to give us a perspective on these two very important events. Natalia, are you there? Natalia? Hello, Natalia? All right, we may need to move on. We may need to move on because Natalia, we can't get into her right now. We'll try to get her on just a bit later on in the newscast. Moving on, while Chile recovers from last week's 8.3 magnitude earthquake and resulting tsunami, an aftershock of 6.3 was registered this Monday in the center of the country. Over 300 aftershocks have hit Chile since the tremendous quake that killed at least 13 people last Wednesday. There are no reports of new victims or damages. The government updated its figures saying that over 9,000 people are homeless. 4 people are still missing and 480 had reportedly been injured. The meteorological phenomenon El Nino is likely to have a great impact this year in the agriculture and fisheries of Ecuador. The United Nations have urged the nations in the Pacific Ocean to prepare for an emergency, especially in the islands. El Nino could affect more than 4 million people in mid-September. Ecuador suffered a big blow in 1982 and then in 1983, when the annual phenomenon brought an average annual precipitation of 4,000 millimeters, flooding many areas across the country.
This year we have observed anomalous variations of ocean surface temperature. If El Nino happens, agriculture would be the first to suffer. Rice paddies at the coastal area will be inundated by torrential downpours. Animal husbandry and sugarcane planting will also be affected. We could foresee that farmers are going to lose jobs because their lands will be flooded.
This Saturday will mark 1 year since the disappearance of the 43 teacher training students in Ayotzinapa in Mexico, and the protest action hasn't stopped. Relatives blocked an important highway on Sunday and will start a hunger strike this Wednesday as they demand answers. We've got Clayton Conn in Mexico with more.
Yesterday, the families and classmates of the 43 disappeared Ayotzinapa students blocked a major highway in the state of Guerrero that connects the beach resort city of Acapulco with the state's capital, Chilpancingo, and is traveled often by Mexico City weekend goers. The action was a protest that sought to open up a toll booth and allow motorists to travel freely on the highway, as well as to continue to inform the public about the case of the missing students that is yet to be resolved. Although they were confronted by riot police, the families decided to not be violently evicted from their protest and lifted their blockade. Now, this action comes only a few days before the parents of the youth are to begin a hunger strike, which will begin on the night of September 23rd, before they're to have a meeting with Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto on the 24th, and 3 days before they are expected to lead mass demonstrations to mark the 1-year anniversary of the forced disappearance of the students. Now, while this past week Mexican authorities affirmed they captured one of the material authors behind the students' disappearance and that they ID'd through DNA the charred bone fragments of another student, many experts, the families and activists question the details which make it improbable that the remains belong to the student and whether that the new detainee is actually involved. With all these doubts and all the exposed failures in the official case, the families are expected to demand in their meeting with Peña Nieto to open up a new investigation and that the search for the students continues. It's Clayton Conn reporting for Telesur here in Mexico City.
Fortunately, we've got Natalia Margarita back on the line right now. Natalia, can you hear me?
I hear you. Hi, Regan there.
Great. Firstly, Pope Francis said in Havana that failure is not an option as it pertains to the FARC-government relations. Do you think his involvement could push the negotiations in the right direction of expediency at all?
Well, I would say that Pope Francis' remarks come in a very crucial moment, and that is right when Colombia's peace process seems to be entering the fifth stage, with both parties involved in the negotiation finally reaching agreements in the most sensitive and critical points, as is the case of justice, for instance, and compensation for the victims. They have been discussing this issue already a year, and now they seem to be finally reaching agreement on that point. On the other side, the statement from Pope Francis also come right after the FARC said last week that they are ready to become a political party and to surrender weapons. So I do believe that his statement, especially in a country which majority is a Catholic country, so this will indeed have an effect in terms of the public opinion, but also in terms of engaging both parties involved even further. Let's remember that the Pope is a spiritual leader, but this Pope specifically play a very important role in politics. We can also mention the role he had in the relations between Cuba and the U.S. So in the same sense, I would definitely say that this will have an impact in Colombia's peace process. I insist that Colombia is a country which its majority, the majority of its population is Catholic, so I do believe it has an important impact that he says that failure is not an option. And he perhaps was also referring to the fact that this peace process in Havana has advanced much further than any previous peace processes that took place before this one. And that's basically what I believe he was referring also to when he says that failure is not an option this time.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt his words will have an impact. On other talks now, the mediated talks in Quito happening today between Colombia and Venezuela. Now, what are the expectations there in Colombia on the ground? Are the people more hopeful than they were last week?
Expectations are running high here, basically because political analysts and also leaders and politicians have been saying here that what the situation of the border needed was right, that both presidents, Maduro and Juan Manuel Santos, finally meet face-to-face and to address like the structural problems that led to this border crisis. Also, after both foreign affairs ministers, María Ángela Holguín of Colombia and Delcy Rodriguez of Venezuela, have already held 2 meetings. So many people here were saying that it is time enough. Finally, both presidents, both heads of the state meet. So the expectations are basically that they manage to address these concrete issues, as is the case of paramilitarism, as is the case of smuggling, that are, I insist, the structural issues that led to this border crisis. Everyone's awaiting here with high expectations to see the outcome of this meeting that is going to take place in Quito.
Always great getting your perspective, Natalia. Thank you so much. We'll catch up with you another time. Thanks.
Okay.
Moving on now, the Supreme Court of the Argentinian province of Tucumán has revoked last week's decision by a lower court to annul the regional elections there. The August 23rd elections were annulled last Thursday after complaints of irregularities by oppositor Jose Cano of the Bicentennial Agreement Party, and after weeks of violent protests. The decision by the top court was taken unanimously on Sunday night, and it validates the Front for Victory candidate Juan Mansur. Mansur had won by 12 points. The government of Tucumán had considered that the annulment attacked the democratic system and described it as a judicial coup. The authorities in Bolivia are trying to reduce the pregnancies among teenagers. Dimitri O'Donnell explains.
Trying to tackle underage pregnancies in Bolivia. At a special meeting in La Paz, health professionals and politicians joined forces to launch a plan to stop teenage girls falling pregnant at a young age.
Every year, 900,000 teenagers fall pregnant, and this is something that worries us greatly. We believe it's really important to create comprehensive policies to address this.
Every day in Bolivia, 246 babies are born to women under the age of 20, one of the highest rates in South America.
Every hour in Bolivia, 3 teenagers fall pregnant, and out of every 10 teenagers, 7 are pregnant. In total, 70% of pregnancies are unplanned.
A UN study says the rate of teenage pregnancies in Bolivia rose from 18% to 25% between 2010 and 2011, and this has a big effect on the mother.
These young teens often have no work, not many job offers, and this is how their children often come into the world. Apart from that, psychologically, they are under pressure and don't feel supported by their family.
Many teens do not have the opportunity to work in fair conditions. They have a child, and it doesn't help that their parents see them as little children.
As part of the new national plan on teenage pregnancies, young people will have greater access to sexual health information in clinics and at school. Public health centres will also help young mothers more by giving them access to services and support online as well as in the community. Dimitri O'Donnell, Telesur, La Paz.
After Sunday's elections, Alexis Tsipras and his leftist Syriza party regained power after an unexpectedly convincing victory at the polls. Despite predictions that claimed the race was too close to call, Syriza claimed victory with 35.5% of the ballots, which gave them 145 seats in the 300-member parliament. Tsipras has just been sworn in, and his new government will be sworn in on Tuesday. Upon hearing of his victory, Tsipras vowed to steer the country's battered economy to recovery. And after news broke that Tsipras won the election, the EU congratulated Tsipras on his victory. However, in the same breath, the European Commission reminded the 41-year-old leader that there is no time to waste, a reference to the implementation of the reforms under the bailout agreement.
Having signed the agreement for this only last month, the new government will now have the mandate to carry out these reforms. As in the past, the Commission and President Juncker stand ready to help. There is a lot of work ahead and no time to lose.
And to give us a perspective of what's happening in Greece, we've got our correspondent Ibai on the line. Ibai, can you hear me?
From Greece, once the 100% of the votes had reported, it's been a very long reported. It's been for 12 hours, and now we can clearly and officially say Alexis Tsipras won the parliamentary elections. Syriza party won about 35% of the vote to give it 45 seats in the 300-seat parliament. And now Alexis Tsipras has already taken off Prime Minister. It's been a non-religious ceremony. Remember that Greece is an officially an Orthodox Christian country, but the new cabinet will be announced by Wednesday morning, according to the leader of the independent Greek party, Panos Kamenos. Anyway, we can already give some names of the candidates. First of all, Panos Kamenos himself, leader of the Independent Greek Party, that will repeat as defense minister. Kamenos' party took 3.7% and 10 seats. It's the currently coalition. Greece former finance minister Euclid Tsakalotos will be also reappointed to a source in the leftist Syriza party to Reuters. Tsakalotos, remember, lead the negotiation for Greece on the terms of bailout worth up 86 billion euros in August. And for now, this is all. We will keep you updated.
Ibai, another question for you. Now, Greeks gave their support again to Tsipras, despite many having had accused him of betrayal to his voters. Can you just describe that support?
Yeah, many of the votes of Syriza are not for the bailout. I mean, are against the austerity measures, and I absolutely disagree with the bailout. But they think that this bailout is not responsibility of Tsipras, but is responsibility of the Troika. I mean, they think that it hasn't been a fair negotiation. It has been a coup. So they believe that Tsipras will implement the according agreement, the mnemonium, the memorandum, but at the same time he has promised to implement social measures to minimize the effects of the bailout.
Last question for you, Ibai. What about those anti-austerity measures? It's the elephant in the room. We need to address that. Will the party now implement those measures?
Yeah, that's one of the important questions now. I mean, nobody knows what kind of measures will he approve. Will Tsipras put in the table, because he has not announced it. He has said that he is compromised with the program, with the European institutions programs. But at the same time, he will announce this week new measures against the privatizations or the social cuts. But we already don't know what kind of measures will be.
All right, Ibai, thanks so much. We'll definitely be following this story. Thanks for giving us an update.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
At an upcoming meeting, some European ministers are expected to voice their opposition to the refugee quotas, which has been a main remedial suggestion put forward by the European Commission. Meanwhile, thousands of migrants and refugees continue to stream into Western Europe. Austria alone registered over 22,000 refugees over the past few days. On Sunday, after visiting Jordan and Egypt, European Council President Donald Tusk tweeted that the EU needed to help Syrian refugees find a better life without leaving their region. After heavy clashes in the town of Zabadani in Syria, warring sides declared a local ceasefire on Sunday. Unfortunately, the civilians in the city of Aleppo were not so lucky. At least 18 civilians were killed by forces loyal to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in an attack that targeted the Al-Shar neighborhood, which is controlled by the opposition. According to the head of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, regime forces used a surface-to-surface missile in the attack, and after people started gathering in the area, the regime fired more missiles. On Sunday, Yemen's Houthi group freed 1 British national, 2 U.S. citizens, and 3 Saudis who were held by the rebels for months. They arrived in Oman, where Sultan Qaboos bin Said Al Said had helped in the negotiations. The hostages were released as a gesture of goodwill ahead of talks between the United Nations envoy to Yemen and the Houthis. The talks will be an effort to end nearly 6 months of fighting there. However, a 3rd U.S. captive is still believed to be held by the Houthi rebels. Reportedly, several governments and organizations are still working to free the captive. On Sunday, a civil society movement in Burkina Faso gathered in protest while West African leaders tried to mediate an end to the coup. Senegalese President and Chief Mediator Macky Sall announced a draft deal intended to restore order. Some of the proposals include that the President of the interim government, Michael Kafando, return to power and that General Gilbert Diandéré and the Presidential Guard under his control be granted amnesty for their acts committed during the coup. However, Reuters reports that the general wants to remain in power until the elections, which would prove resolving the coup very difficult. Some worrying news from Beijing, where 6 runners and 1 race official suffered heart attacks during a marathon on Sunday, possibly as a result of air pollution. According to authorities, air quality index levels between 151 to 200 are classified as unhealthy. In Beijing, the level was recorded at 175 this weekend. Despite the conditions, Kenyan Mariko Kurchumba as well as Ethiopian Bethahelm Sheranet took the men's and women's titles in under 2.5 hours. British fashion designer Vivienne Westwood used her platform at London's Fashion Week to protest against climate change and austerity. Before her catwalk show, Westwood led a group of protesters on the streets and warned of mass extinction. A keen environmental campaigner and activist, Westwood said her career allows her to be vocal on such issues.
The British government really surreptitiously has stopped all the funding and help to clean energy, renewable energy, and they've given it all to their mates in the fossil fuel industry. They're just bringing it on, bring it on, bring it on, you know, and so so we have to just stop. That is our word, stop, stop, stop. Give us a breath and let's try and deal with the problem of the planet.
And before we go, we've got an update on you from our top story. The Venezuelan President, Nicolas Maduro, has just arrived in Quito for his meeting with Colombia's Juan Manuel Santos to discuss the crisis on the border between the two countries. These here are pictures from the airport in Quito. The long-awaited meeting is being hosted by Ecuador's President, Rafael Correa, and by Uruguay's President, Tabar Vasquez, on behalf of the regional bodies SALAC and UNASUR, respectively. For more on these and other stories, please visit our website, telesur.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Regan Veens. We'll have our major newscast for you this evening.